All right. Why Ashes of Creation will fail by AM Valentine. 4.3k views on a 50 subscriber channel. Mad respect. Honestly, kind of jealous. Let's see. Lost Ark has some good bosses, in my honest opinion. Okay, so he talks about Lost Ark a bit. Balance is possible. Okay, balance stuff. Okay, so looking at the comments, two things I will say. One, Lost Ark, I'm assuming he's talking about either monetization or when it was released, and that's not doing too hot, right? Or is like maybe the boss. I don't know what he would talk about in Lost Ark. Balance is possible. So balance, the way Ashes wants to do balance is completely unbalanced. But given their philosophy on the game, I understand it, but we'll see how it plays out. It's hard for me to say if it will fail or not. So first of all, their philosophy is rock, paper, scissors type thing. Though I think there will be a lot of papers to a lot of scissors. However, the thing is, the philosophy of Ashes of Creation as a whole is being good at something specific. So being very good for PvP to do PvP, being very good for PvE to do PvE. However, if your character is meant for, like, let's say assassination, you'll probably be better for PvP, right? For like, sorry, not PvP, but for like ganking people in the world, right? Because you're an assassin. Whereas if you're like, a sword and board, you're there to grab aggro. You shouldn't be doing damage. Kind of like how, like, you have this tank, damage dealer, and healer class, right? Healer is not supposed to be taking damage. It's supposed to heal damage. A tank is not supposed to be dealing damage. It's supposed to be able to take damage. So imagine this on a much grander scale, where every job has its own specialization and they're good at some things and not good at other things. So I feel like, will it be balanced? Absolutely not. Ashes of Creation is the opposite of what balance looks like, but I feel like they're aiming for it to not be balanced. They want people to be specifically good at what they do. I don't think this is a very healthy philosophy for modern gaming, but we'll see how it goes, right? He wants like in a real RPG, this is usually what happens, right? In a real RPG, you are role playing what you're good at. If you're role playing a blacksmith, guess what? You're probably not too good with flowers. It's like probably, right? It's like if you look at animes or look at like history, blacksmiths were good at blacksmithing. They weren't like good at a lot of other shit, or like they were expert at this but not really good at or like okay at other stuff, right? So specialization, that's the word. Ashes of Creation wants you to specialize in an aspect of the game. There. But yeah, let's see why Ashes will fail.
Ashes of Creation is an upcoming sandbox MMORPG developed by Intrepid Studios.
Yeah.
It is a game that many people are hailing as the savior of MMORPGs and he who shall bring down the evil reign of Blizzard. Now,
I don't know if I agree with that. Like, many people say this will save the MMORPG genre, but I think like it would bring the RPG element back into MMORPGs. I'll give it that much.
hope it does, as much as anyone else, really.
Yeah, we all do, man.
Unfortunately for me, I've experienced too many MMO releases to let.
You forgot ESO. But yes. Guild Wars 2 release, not that great. New World, buggy as hell, also could take advantage of the economy. Final Fantasy 14 apparently was a shit show. Classic WoW, again, for 2003 was fine, but every expansion since, except maybe Dragonflight, but we'll wait and see, has been like every expansion launch has been, after like Cataclysm, has been pretty because of systems. And ESO, so many bugs in the release. It was so bad, yeah.
this one slide without first raising my concerns. And there are a lot of concerns. So, I'm making this video in the hopes that I can quell your expectations and prepare you for what I believe to be simply one of many failures to come.
Now,
But
many failures to come is not really true, is it? Final Fantasy 14 is not a failure right now. Guild Wars 2 is not a failure right now. WoW, unfortunately, is not a failure right now. Right, ESO is not doing too hot right now, but I wouldn't call it a failure, you know? I wouldn't call it Rift. Okay? Rift, failure, sure. So, will Ashes of Creation be a failure? Another thing is, if Steven is not really planning, like it would be good if the game would bring him money, but as far as I understand, even if the game fails, he can keep it going, like financially wise. Therefore, he will be able to make it good as time goes. I think that's fine. A lot of, yes, I agree with him 100%. MMORPGs have what, as usually 1.0 of an MMORPG is usually shit, and you need to wait like an expansion or two until it gets good. So,
but first,
I agree with
a
him.
short story.
Yeah, let's go.
Wildstar was an upcoming sandbox MMORPG
Yeah.
developed by Carbide
Yeah.
Studios. It was a game that many people hailed as the savior of MMORPGs and he who shall bring back the good old days.
Was it? I mean, I wasn't the time, like I didn't play it because I was like too invested into WoW, but I don't remember it offering much of like an RPG element to the MMORPG genre. I remember it making it very hard to do content without a group, but other than that, the RPG element, not so much.
It had action combat with skill
Yeah.
shots, a lot of great PvE systems, polished character movement, and skill rotations. It had the best housing system in any MMORPG and arguably
Did
any
it?
game. You could go as far as to compare it with the best housing in the industry, tackling
Okay.
giants like Sims. The world was well developed and it
That's
looked
pretty cool.
amazing with its animated art
Dude, until you can build shit like you can in something like Valheim or like Minecraft, whatever, but like basically Valheim, housing is just not interesting to me. Until I can completely design how the house looks on the inside and the outside, as well as like all the other shit like windows and all that, I don't give a shit. After experiencing Valheim house design, I really don't care about this so much.
style that trumped all competition at the time and looks good to this day. So then, what was the downfall of this amazing game?
Yeah, what was it? Oh wow, Ultima Online.
Nostalgia. This game was developed by people who had played many MMORPGs in their life. Whenever they talked about their game, you could see the pride they had in their prior accomplishments. These were memories they cherished, and it was through these memories that they decided to develop a game and what manner of game it would be. It was these memories that ruined Wildstar.
This disclaimer is hardcore. It's time to unleash raids. Oh, I'm sorry. For those who aren't hardcore, raids are when 20 to 40 lunatics rush headlong into a nightmarish scenario of pure carnage and impossible odds.
See, that's what I don't agree. I don't think raids have ever been about that. There are raids that can be about that, but as a whole, I don't think raids have ever been something about like going to something with impossible odds that is chaotic. There's like whatever he said, right? It's like I don't think raids have really been about that most times. Some sure have, with like some bosses maybe, but I don't think most of them have. It was just about a big group fighting a big boss. Like it really was fighting a big fucking boss. That's what it was about. A big boss that does cool shit and you want to down it and you're going to get some loot. That's really what raids are about. Cool fucking fight against something that is like, wow. Like having it chaotic and stuff like that, that's extra and that's cool to have, but I don't think that's really what raids ever, like, you know, been about, like, specifically.
Why? Because they're hardcore. Check it.
Movement looks good though.
Hardcore. We can achieve a level of complexity that you wouldn't believe. Hardcore. Whee! And we make sure that every big accomplishment, whether it's mini bosses, events, or challenges, comes with loot. And it looks good. Hardcore. So you think you're that special breed of crazy? Hardcore. The kind who drinks adrenaline for breakfast? Hardcore. You might want to check out our raids.
As you can probably deduce from the little montage you just saw,
I called yours on the
they
spinning
like
rat.
to
Okay.
think themselves hardcore gamers. Being a hardcore gamer has gotten more of an updated definition since the times when MMORPGs were at the top of the gaming industry. Beating Elden Ring at level 1 with Fizz.
So, see, I don't agree comparing stuff to Elden Ring because it's, first of all, completely different genre, and also it's single player, not an MMO. Okay, the other thing is, it's like, I also don't consider these guys hardcore. You know? I mean, okay, maybe they are, sure. Like, I don't know, who would I consider a hardcore gamer at this point, honestly? I don't even know what I would consider a hardcore gamer is. Right? I would consider maybe... What's his name? The guy who plays League of Legends. Hide on Bush. Hide on Brush, whatever. Faker. I would consider him a hardcore gamer. Like, watching him play some games outside of League, that's crazy. Seeing how fast he can use abilities and dodge shit in League sometimes, like the Z play, I call that hardcore, right? Not getting hit by a boss in Elden Ring, in my opinion, is not hardcore. You know? It's a lot of practice. The boss telegraphs the attacks all the time. And again, does require a lot of time and practice. Yeah, sure. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Having a no-hit run, any percent, fantastic. But for some reason, I can't consider that hardcore because it is extremely possible to not get hit by any mechanic. It just requires a lot of practice. And this guy clearly also has a lot of practice in Souls games. It's not like he just picked up Elden Ring out of nowhere and just did this. He probably played all the Souls games, probably played Sekiro, probably played Bloodborne, all that stuff. So it's like he has experience in this genre and he understands, he reacts properly to telegraphs of the attack, right? It's not like there's like 1,000 fucking balls flying at him from all directions at random intervals and he can just completely like boop, you know, and like see exactly where the safe spot is, right? This is more like a reactionary, in my opinion. The way I see hardcore is more of like a fast calculation in your head. It's also reactionary, I guess, but it's like, I don't know, it just feels very different. I don't know how to explain it, but this, for example, doesn't feel hardcore. Massive props to this guy, but I just don't consider this hardcore.
Is hardcore. Beating whatever this is.
This is hardcore.
Hardcore gamer.
That's hardcore. Yes. A lot of fighter games I would consider hardcore situations.
Don't sweat the technique.
Now that's, yeah.
Also makes you hardcore.
That's kind of, yeah. It's
also,
I feel like, yeah, the fast clicks. The fast clicks is really what makes some stuff hardcore. But like, yeah, like, I'm sorry, Elden Ring, I like, you know what I would consider hardcore in Elden Ring? Pulling in, or like using a mod to spawn like 3 different bosses and killing those 3 bosses without getting hit once. Then I'll be like, that's hardcore. Even 2 bosses, depends. Like if it's like 2 bosses, like the Night Cavalry and this guy, like the guy who's traveling here in this area, like somewhere there, I think that's him. But yeah, no, I don't know what that is. Either way, but like summoning 2 of those, not hardcore. But summoning like, let's go with like not the Elden Beast, the guy before Elden Beast, right? The first phase of Elden Beast, and let's say Louis Sois, Horalu, right? Those 2 together, beating them without getting hit, I'm like, okay, that's kind of hardcore, right? And throw Millennia in there, like, yeah, that's hardcore. Like 3 of those bosses in one go, and being able to beat them without getting hit, I'm like, okay, that's super hardcore. And not relying on RNG of them, right? Just like all the time, like do this 10 times in a row and beat them 10 times in a row without getting hit. That's hardcore. Probably like 1 is enough, but yeah.
True that high tier rating makes you a hardcore gamer.
Nope.
What doesn't
That's
make
not
you hardcore anymore is grinding and doing menial tasks
True.
for hundreds of hours.
I agree.
Players want grind to be a choice they make to grow in power, a choice they pursue in order to tackle on difficult foes. Preventing them from ever seeing a tough enemy until they're fully geared up and prepared to face him is what kills the appeal of grind. It's amazing to kill a tough boss much earlier than you're supposed to.
Yes. And to this, I want to add all the menial chores you have to do in order to access content do not make you hardcore. Also, it just makes you have enough time to do the grinds. And also, just because you make them extremely long and tedious would not make you hardcore. Now, if you told me something like in order to access the mythic version of this boss, you have to finish the previous raid on heroic, I'll be like, okay, that makes sense. Still won't make you hardcore, right? However, if you be like, well, we added mythic plus rating for no extra rewards, and it scales indefinitely, okay? Each boss you can do separately. It has Mythic Plus mechanics that you would have to deal with. So it's the Mythic version of the boss plus Mythic Plus mechanics. It has also more HP and more damage a bit, right? On those bosses, like 10% is already like a fucking ton, right? And has like some affixes, right? With each Mythic Plus, add in an affix to the raid, right? And all you can get from it is cosmetics. And or like, no, fuck it. You can't even get anything, right? I'll be like, that's pretty hardcore. The rewards don't really play a big role in this, like rewards or not. But to do like a Mythic plus 5 raid, I'm like, that's pretty fucking hardcore, yeah. Like, but to do a regular Mythic raid, in my opinion, is not hardcore, right? It's not even special anymore. Too many people are able to do this. There we go. That's what hardcore is. Almost no one else is able to do what you do. That's why Faker is a hardcore gamer. Almost no one can do what Faker does, right? That's why, like, doing those weird, like, games that he showed with a rhythm game, right? Like, extreme fucking fast clicks. Almost no one else can do what he does. What he did, any percent no-hit challenge, anyone who can do any boss on no-hit can do that challenge. It's just gonna take them a very long time. I don't consider that to be hardcore. I feel like there's too many players who can do fights without getting hit. Take the guy who's like, let me solo her. He can do Millennia without getting hit every fucking time. Am I going to consider him hardcore? No, he's not a hardcore gamer. He's just really good doing Millennia fight. If he put as much effort he put into Millennia fight to do every other boss, he can probably do an any percent no-hit run, right? It's literally just more of a time investment rather than like being hardcore gamer. That's why I said, like, if you fight 3 bosses, then yeah, maybe then I'll be like, okay, probably not a lot of people can do that. It does make you unique, you know?
It's also amazing to come back later when you're much stronger and
Unique in your
destroy
skill.
him. Both of these options are vital for an MMORPG.
Yeah.
Now I want you to understand just how bad things were for WildStar. So here's a quick guide on WildStar's infamous raid attunement. And if you're wondering what this has to do with Ashes of Creation, worry not, we will get there. So first, you need to reach level 50 and accept the attunement quest. Then you need to acquire 150 Elder Gems. Elder Gems can only be earned at max level and are earned when a level 50 character earns 75,000 Elder Points, which are accumulated instead of experience points. Elder Gems can be earned by defeating raid.
See, like stuff like this, like, you know, it's like,
and veteran bosses, as well as from quest rewards at level.
The reason I'm okay with this to an extent is because unless these raid and veteran bosses are, I wouldn't say really challenging, but teach you mechanics, so the game wants you to learn specific mechanics, specific animations multiple times so you get through your memory. That would be the only reason I would see that's like, okay, we decide that 75,000 Elder Points will make you do the raid and veteran bosses enough times to understand these mechanics well enough so you can advance to the next challenge. I'll be like, okay, that's cool. I mean, reaching max level, that's fine. So like attunement stuff like that, I'm okay with. Attunement of like, for example, like the attunements in World of Warcraft that they had, I was like, fucking like, why? You know, I was like, just fuck this. You know, lore-wise, I get it, but as far as like, I didn't give a shit. It didn't teach you anything about the boss or anything like that. It was just like maybe lore-wise stuff.
50. Now, kill the elemental boss in Kilgar. Obtain beloved level reputation with Dominion or exile. 32,000 points of reputation.
Again, the reputation, in my opinion, should not matter. It's only a story thing. It's not a difficulty thing. Obtain beloved reputation means nothing. Shouldn't be a thing. Killing elemental boss, again, if it teaches you some stuff towards the fight, totally fine with it. Especially if like that boss would summon this elemental, so you should know how to deal with him.
You reach level 50 with between 15,000 to 17,000 reputation, meaning you essentially have to level twice. You get rep by doing basic repetitive tasks in the same area. Now complete the Arkship Heist event. Obtain silver medals or higher for every adventure. You get a medal ranking for reaching the end of a dungeon.
I'm okay with this. This shows the skill of the character, of the player. I'm okay with the medals. I don't know what the heist event is or XL equivalent. I don't know what it is. Again, skill-based activities to make you able to do a raid. Also, only one time, not multiple times. I am totally fine with. Teaching players how to play the game at endgame is, in my opinion, a great way for the game to develop more interesting and challenging fights, because you are increasing the skill level of the players. For example, take people now who played WoW for like forever since Classic, and they played Shadowlands Mythic raiding. Put them in Classic, they would fall asleep in a fight and still kill it because that's how easy it is. But way back when Classic just came out, these fights were hard, right? They were considered hard for what people knew. But if you took the time to teach those players during Classic, before they got to Ragnaros, before they got to BWL, BWL, stuff like that, if you went out of your way, right? It's like, okay, to attune to BWL, you have to do these specific fights. These specific fights teach you pretty much most of the mechanics that you encounter in the raid. It would be like night and day. People would be so fucking good at doing them because they already know. Final Fantasy does this pretty well. They introduce a lot of the mechanics that you would see in the raid. They introduce all of them throughout the story. If they have a new mechanic, it's probably going to be in one of the dungeons before you even reach the raid. right? So most people recognize mechanics extremely fast, right? And even if people don't, other people will explain to them when, even if they fuck up that mechanic, it's not that big of a deal, right? Same with like the clicking mechanic, where it's like you have to click really fast. I forgot what they're called, something maneuver, where they have to click the keyboard and the mouse pretty fast. This is introduced to you early on, and even if you fail it, it's not that big of it's introduced to you in, I believe the first time you see it is in Alexander, the first boss of Alexander, and it's one click. Active time maneuver or something like that. It's one click. So by mistake you would probably get it right? And then later on they add like the many clicks, and then it's like very fast clicks, like in the fight against Elidibus. That one has very fast, a lot of clicks, right? So they gradually make it harder, but if you just introduced Elidibus right away with all those clicks, many people will be like, well, what the fuck, right? It's like, I didn't know this, and then be annoying. So, you know, teaching people the mechanics before, I think, is a vital, not vital, but like helps a lot in making raids harder and harder, because you increase the skill level of the players.
Dungeon in time, and you needed to perform well enough for a silver medal, turning every single dungeon into a hardcore chase for gold medals.
Good.
Complete the Mech Assault event in Parside. Obtain
Don't know what that
silver
is.
medals or higher for every veteran dungeon, which were
Fine with
quite
that.
hard and killed a lot of parties.
Good.
Complete the Slugging It Out event in Mulgrave. Complete the Flight of Fancy event in Auroria. And
again, I don't know if these events are just like kind of like a story thing. They're super easy. Like you shouldn't be able to do this. Silver medal in a veteran dungeon, I feel like it's not, you know, it's not that much to ask for.
All 10 world bosses, which were
again
all in
unnecessary
areas around the map. Now,
unnecessary unless those world bosses have similar mechanics. Again, like what I said before.
I want you to know that when the game launched, WildStar had only 4 dungeons and 4 raids. With this grind, they had essentially cut the game in half. While grinding and taking forever to level up sounds exciting to a hardcore MMO player, that's just a niche. It's not content that will entertain
It's not hardcore
or serve
either.
100% of a player base. It's not content that can sustain the average user. That's content that can only serve the type of person who's willing to spend almost a dozen hours every day to play your game just to keep up. They designed content for the type of players they used to be. But what?
See, there's a misconception. If you compare a hardcore player to just someone who has a lot of time to play video games, that's not a hardcore player. That's just somebody who has a lot of time on their hands, right? And I hate that stuff gets locked behind unskillful things that just require a lot of time, which is basically what all the systems in WoW were. They weren't about skilled. Like, you're not stronger because you are more skilled. You're stronger because you had more time to grind shit out, right? Same with like, you know, why it's impossible to compete in the world race for raids if that's not your job. Because most of this shit will require a lot of your time, not necessarily a lot of your skill. So many guilds are getting cutting edge, right? I'm not saying like vast majority of guilds, but a lot of guilds are getting cutting edge. Would they be able to compete? Fuck no. Why? Because they have a job, they have a life. Like, all these things that require so much time, right? That's not possible. But if let's say the mythic raid was released one boss at a time, and you can just go straight into that boss, we would see a completely different race with many people getting first kill on this guy and first kill on that guy and first kill on this guy, right? Obviously, this would be a worldwide release, so everyone can do it at the same time. You would see a lot more participation from other guilds, but because they're listed as a full raid, you're not gonna get it, because it's just not a time thing. It's not a skill thing as much as it is a time thing. Don't get me wrong, the people who are getting the world first are still very skilled players, but we don't even know if they're the most skilled players, because a lot of very skilled players just don't have the time, and that they cannot invest the time to do it, right?
What the developers didn't realize was that they were a minority even within their own games. And they weren't even that good at the games. They just spent a lot of time in there.
Yeah.
To give you an idea of what makes you hardcore in an MMO nowadays, I would point you towards the recent re-release of Classic. The first clear of Ragnaros was done by a guild wearing green gear, and they weren't even max level. Now that was cool to see. It essentially proved that
But they're not hardcore. Those people are also not hardcore. Okay. They killed Ragnaros. They're not hardcore players.
These old school hardcore MMO players were just full of shit.
Yeah.
You didn't need to grind to be able to beat a boss. They just sucked that much. The saddest thing about WildStar is that if you remove its history and instead pretend that the game is launching now, it would still be the most exciting MMORPG to come, and it would still be hailed as a WoW killer. The game did everything that the MMO community claims it wants, and it did it right 1,000 times.
Did they?
The combat is fresh. The gameplay is polished. Player housing is great. It has a lot of systems with a lot of depth that enhance the gameplay. And yet, it's grindy, it's tedious, lacked in content, and even the content it did have was locked behind 1,000 attunement.
So they didn't do what people want. Hear this again. See what he said.
Player housing is great. It has a lot of systems with a lot of depth that enhance the gameplay. And yet, it's grindy, it's tedious, lacked in content.
There you go. It lacked in content. That's all that matters. Just because people are saying, we want player housing, we want this thing, we want that, it's not this instead of other shit. It's this plus what we already have, right? We still want the raid, like the multiple raids that we get with an expansion of World of Warcraft. We still want more dungeons. 8, in my opinion, is just not enough per expansion. Okay? We still want more shit to do in the world, as well as player housing, as well as world PvP, as well as solo queue for PvP. People want a lot of shit. It's not something instead of the other. So saying that's like, even though WildStar promised all these things and great housing and all this stuff, yeah, but there was nothing else to it. Player housing is there for like, player housing is not what keeps people in the game. Cosmetic is not what you would not care about player housing or cosmetics in a game unless you want to play the game. You do not care about how you look like if you live on an island surrounded by no one. Okay? It's when there are other people that care about how you look, that's when you care how you look. You know, you don't go to the mall, well, whatever, maybe to the mall, yeah. But you don't go to like a date looking like shit because you always look like shit. No, you're gonna go to a date looking like as good as you possibly can because other people are there who will judge you by your look. You get a house in an MMO because you want people to come into your house and look at it. You don't build the house really for yourself. It's like saying girls put on makeup for themselves. Give me a fucking break. You're telling me girls want to spend an hour to put on makeup and then spend like 20 minutes to take it off before they go to sleep, only to wake up in the morning to put on makeup again? Bro, if they lived in like an island all alone, they would never put on makeup. Give them all the makeup equipment you want. Maybe they'll do it out of boredom, but not for like to look pretty. Like all this like you get the point.
The content it did have was locked behind 1,000 attunement requirement. Fast forward to today.
Yeah, the grind is shit.
Ashes of Creation is coming. It's the next WoW killer. Yay! It promises great
we finally got to Ashes 30 minutes in.
Combat and a lot of sandbox features for the players to enjoy. It also promises that it will have a long and meaningful leveling journey that you will.
This is only a good thing if it is actually meaningful and enjoyable. If it's long for the sake of being long, it's not fun. It's not good. It's not meaningful. But if it's actually meaningful and fun, then it's totally fine. I'm okay with it. I don't care if the leveling experience take even fucking half a year, as long as it matters, right? As long as I'm enjoying it, as long as it immerses me in the game. But if it takes half a year for the sake of taking half a year for no reason, like fucking Silk Road, then yeah, fuck it.
Get to max level in 45 days if you play 4 to 6 hours a fucking day. That all of
it's
the
long.
endgame content will be difficult, and you will need to group up and socialize. Huh. Kinda reminds me of something.
Yeah,
Now,
I see all the problems with this too. I'm not too excited for it. But again, it depends. Like, first of all, if you cannot have one character do it all, there has to be like some massive fucking catch-up systems in Ashes of Creation. Because if I want to play an archer and then want to play a warrior, it takes me 45 days, 4 to 6 hours a day of grinding to get my guy all the way up after I did everything on my archer or whatever, and now I have to do the same thing on the warrior. That is not good game design. I understand the RPG in it, where it's like, well, your character is the archer, but we live in the real world, Steven. You know, it's like, oh, we don't have all the time in the world. The guy in the game can sit in a city without eating anything for 10 years, and that would be fine. I can't, okay? I don't have all the time in the world. So, if one guy can do it all, I'm totally fine with it. If you can respec, I'm totally fine with it. If you can choose any profession, I'm totally fine with it. If you can't, then making a second character should be extremely seamless, right? And like getting it up to par, like to the max level, should be extremely seamless. I don't care if the first character takes forever. However, attunements, for example, I already said my piece, but for the most part, the attunement should teach you stuff you need to know for what you're being attuned. It shouldn't be like a reputation grind to unlock a secret key to go. I get that. It sounds cool in your head. Realistically, it isn't. Or if it is, one time only.
listen, I know that
Account
alone will
account
not
bound.
quench your thirst for Ashes of Creation, especially considering that if Wildstar didn't have its plug pulled so early, and they got the chance to rework their leveling and endgame, it would be a decent game at least.
Yeah,
I'm here to
maybe.
break down why Ashes of Creation won't even get that far. You
Oh.
see, it's easy to let your imagination run through the best version of someone's promises and picture yourself exploring a well-made world. What is hard is actually thinking through all of someone's promises and seeing them all fall apart. And that's exactly what the rest of this video will consist of. I will take the core of Ashes of Creation's features and break them down into how they would actually play out, and you will see exactly how bad things really are. First, let's talk combat. This is by far the most important aspect of any game. If your combat sucks, then it's really hard to maintain the type of player base an MMO requires, especially one that is putting such a huge
Combat
emphasis
looked
on
fine.
player interaction and PvP. Ashes of Creation is gonna have 64 classes. Thing is, there's actually only 8 classes, each with their own slight alterations. The problem with the system is going to be balance. They are a new
So, as far as I understood about the system, and that video was made after this one, so maybe this guy also didn't know. It's 8 classes times 8 augmentation for the class. That makes sense. So each type of class that you do like a subclass for augments the abilities of the main class. Should this be balanced across the board? Because the game is pure PvP, like world PvP always and stuff like that, I would say yes, but also no. Because, again, like, take ESO for example. The game is somewhat balanced, there are metas, but because it is a lot of skill play, technically anyone can beat anyone. Kinda, except like tanks beating other tanks, really. But yeah, you know, that's never gonna happen.
Studio, and balance is something that even the most hardened and professional
It's not gonna
balance
happen.
teams have yet to figure out properly when it comes to such variety. Most MMOs struggle with class choice. A lot of players will straight up quit if their class is that much worse than all of the competitors. In Ashes of Creation, this sort of problem is going to be way more fucked up to sort out. Think back to what I said about leveling. It takes 45 days to level up a class. That means if you made a poor choice, you are done.
This only is relevant if you can't respec.
You will always be at a disadvantage, and it will take you more than a month to sort the problem out. All the while, you'll be playing a competitive economy game with open world combat. You'll make one bad choice, and you'll have to choose between being behind forever or keeping up but always being on the losing side of fights and duels. What's even worse is that they already confirmed they won't even bother balancing for 1v1. In the words of the man himself, the balance is going to have a rock, paper, scissors dynamic, where one class might have a straight advantage over another simply because it counters you. Just by this one choice, the whole idea of that cool election mechanic where you can fight in a tournament to decide the mayor is out of the window. You can't exactly be excited for a 1v1 duel when one of the guys just has a flat advantage over the other. It's also going to be...
Yes, I agree. The mayor system in that regard, not great. But this is the same, and again, I'm not justifying, I'm not complaining. Take World of Warcraft Classic. Mage beats Warrior 110% of the time. Warrior stands no chance beating a Mage. Like, you legit cannot do anything to a Mage as a Warrior. You can't get to him. The Mage can have, like, I don't know, 100 HP. Well, no, because Warrior does have, like, the heroic throw. But, like, yeah, let's say this. Mage can start with half HP. Warrior can start with full HP. The Mage will probably win. Okay, more than likely the Mage will win. Okay, so...
be dreadful for players who are out in the world farming, only to be their counter in the open world and have few chances of success. The rock, paper, scissor dynamic simply doesn't function for the open world combat they're going for, and many other side features as well. That's just one problem with the combat. Another. Let's say that they solve the problem of balance by making sure each class has at least one variation of the 8 at your disposal that is actually viable. Well, now you went from 64 classes to only a handful that stand out. God forbid it actually becomes difficult to switch between your choices.
That's the thing. If it's difficult to switch between your choices and you have to make a new character and shit like that, that's not a good system. I will 100% agree with it. Yeah.
People will be even more mad at that point. Add to that the issue of an endless talent system based around both your character and your weapons, 20 active skills per class you can choose out of 40, and you get more variety and options than World of Warcraft ever gave you. We've actually seen this exact problem in Guild Wars 2. The classes in there operate by a very similar idea, except instead of augments, you choose your spells based on your weapon. Each weapon gives you a unique set of 5 skills based on the class you chose, and you get to choose 2 weapons. Ultimately, it adds up to a lot of classes and a lot of work that doesn't pay out, because at the end of the day, you'll have the same basic rotation for the remainder of the game. The classes in Guild Wars 2 never went anywhere interesting, and they were unbalanced. All that for the sake of a huge amount of variety. Variety works in games like League of Legends and Dota 2 because you just start the game and try out a new character. In MMOs, you have to level a class for hundreds of hours, and most people don't have that level of commitment. If they see a hard imbalance, they're likely to just quit your game. To give you an idea of how bad the Guild Wars 2 classes were, the recent Ranger showcase was already better than the Guild Wars 2 Ranger. Now I want to focus on what I believe to be one of the most important things in an MMORPG. What makes an MMORPG fun? Because the class design can only keep you entertained for so long. Eventually you get used to it and you'll need something to freshen it up.
I think it depends on the MMORPG. Each MMORPG I find fun, something else about it fun. Final Fantasy, I found the story really fun. WoW gear grinding is fun. ESO, I like the variety of sets. I found that to be fun. Also, the combat was pretty fun. So it really kind of depends. Like, now, most people says like, well, it's because you play with other players and you make memories and meet friends. Like, maybe. I can't remember any of those times, but yeah, for some people they say it's like so memorable for them. I personally don't care. For me, it was always like the loot, you know. For me, it was like the Mage Tower was really fun. Getting that Mage Tower appearance at like bare minimum item level was fucking fun. Very, very pissed, like man, angrier issues, but when I got it, it was really fun. Um, but like, yeah, I think every MMO is very different. Why it's fun, I don't know.
Up. So how does MMO gameplay get spiced up throughout an expansion? We're talking 2 years playing the same game. Well, the way you spice it up is by not making the classes the main attraction. A class
Usually,
is
yeah,
only the tool you choose.
it's the content, yeah.
What truly defines the gameplay of this genre is the same thing that defines many other genres. It's the bosses. The way adventure games work is you're given a kit to do
I wouldn't say it's the bosses, it's the content. Doesn't matter if it's the bosses or something else, as long as the content is fine.
the things that you're meant to do. But what brings out the beauty in your kit is the way you apply it against a tough foe. One that has many tools at his disposal and has the ability to bring out all the new ones in yours. A good boss has a lot of mechanics that make sense and are easy for a player to read. If it's easy to read, it's fun. Because it can be as hard as you want, but as long as the player knows what to do, then it's still fun.
Yes, understanding what you die to, I wouldn't call that to be fun, but it is mandatory, because if you just like have to waste a few deaths just to figure out what you die to, that's not really fun. You're just standing there waiting for the mechanic to go off. It's like, okay, so that's what killed me. That's not really fun. Yes, I agree. No, like understanding what happened to you will make it more fun. That specific case is not fun, but it will make it more fun to figure out how to beat it instead of wasting time figuring out what it was to begin with.
Dark Souls is a perfect example because they give you a very simple kit. The answer to everything that the boss does, no matter how insane it might be. Just dodge, dumbass. And that makes it fun. Because now the entire game is tailored around how cool the bosses are, and all you do is pay attention to the bosses. You dodge the boss's attacks, you dance with them, you run away from them, you find tiny windows where you can toss in an attack just to see the boss spaz out on you. But if you were to just take the basic kit from a Dark Souls game, or a Souls-like in general, then your kit would be empty as shit. You can do nothing. You get one bloody attack. Imagine doing that one attack for hundreds of hours.
What do you mean? Have you not seen Asmongold play Elden Ring? Jump, attack, jump, attack, jump, attack, jump, attack, jump, attack, jump, attack. I mean, come on. He had fun though.
On end. Imagine what the grind would feel like. That would be tedious. That would make for a dog shit game. That is how you get a New World. If New World cut its world in half and its systems in half and redirected those resources in having some raids and 10 more dungeons, we'd all be playing New World right now. The point is, good, complex bosses make a game, especially an MMORPG.
Got to jump,
It's
buddy.
actually the bosses themselves that forge the best lore and the best world areas around them, not the other way around. To give you an example, Lost Ark had to reset its endgame 2 times and add in different types of content just to see that the only content that made players come back were the Legion raids with the massive, extremely detailed and difficult bosses. And if we're taking a bit of a look at Alpha 1, there just isn't anything there. And you might say, yeah, it's an alpha. But keep in mind, this game is taking inspiration from Guild Wars 2, and it's taking inspiration from Archage, and from what I understand, a bit of Lineage 2 as well,
There's
EverQuest,
apparently a
Star
lot of
Wars
Lineage,
Online.
but yeah.
What did these games have in common? Dogshit boss design. Like absolutely horrendous boss design. I'm talking thing is a stat stick at best, and having you sit there and watch it doing nothing at worst. You'll see a boss fly off and start shooting shit at you, and the only thing you can do is sit there as the healers give you heals. And that's half the boss fight. Now I want to show you something. I was actually listening to the developers talk about their favorite bosses, and they were saying that this boss fight right here that I'm showing you on screen is one of their favorite bosses.
Okay, so I think Narc was talking about this, like why this fight was so fun, and it wasn't the fight itself, it was the journey to get to this fight. I agree with both. The fight needs to be interesting, but the fight needs to be cool and interesting and like not boring, and also the journey to get to that fight. I personally don't like when a fight is like this, even if the journey was like how many players had to craft this, how many times you died, lost 4 levels, spent 2 weeks to getting back to. I get that. I understand the experience and the journey to finally down this boss. Sure. But specifically if the reason you would be dying to this fight is would be because someone else's fault, that takes a lot away from your enjoyment of the game, knowing that you worked so hard to get to this point, but fucking Bobby over there, it's his first time doing this, he kills everyone, and now you have to regrind the last 4 levels. As far as journey goes, sounds like an amazing journey, right? But as far as experience goes, it really fucking sucks to have to regrind everything, refarm consumables, get back to this boss, especially in Ashes, it's gonna be public bosses, everything. Get back to this boss, hopefully the other guild's not here out to get you, and hope Bobby doesn't fuck it up this time. You know? The whole so this is the problem. You cannot make bosses way too hard if the death punishment is way too severe. That's how it is. This boss cannot be as hard as a Melania fight if, in order to come back here after you die one time, is 2 weeks to farm out the XP again. That would not be fun for anyone. So the boss has to be extremely easy if the punishment is that severe for dying. However, if there's no punishment for dying, for example, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, the boss can be as severe as you want. Now, you want a balance in between, then, you can't have too much of a severe penalty for death, and you cannot have the boss be too hard as well. It can be hard-ish, but not too hard. Has to be pretty clear and very forgiving on mistakes, right? That's kind of the problem with this design. It's like they contradict each other so much. So yeah, I can see that as being an issue.
It's one of their favorite, my man.
What are some of your guys' favorite raids that you've been in the past in other games? I think my favorite was probably like Valakas or Antheris in Lineage 2.
Antheris was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's like a 4-hour, 5-hour long raid, and you lost like 6 levels that took you a month to get back.
Yep.
See, that's what I mean, right? So the raid has to be extremely easy. The fight itself has to be so easy that, like, if it takes 6-hour raid, it's like it has to be pretty fucking easy. Okay. I'm not saying like long means easy, but means that you could be there for that long without like dying and shit like that. Because if you die in Lineage, whatever, Lineage 2, you lose levels. So you, for 6 hours in that raid, you didn't die once. That means it's really fucking easy. Okay? So yeah. Again, if they're going down the route of like severe punishment, they cannot make boss fights hard. It is what it is. If they go down the route of very hard boss fights, you cannot make it very severely punishing. So people who get their kicks from doing like something like a mythic raid boss or a savage or an ultimate or a savage in Final Fantasy, mythic raid in World of Warcraft, then they are not going to enjoy the bosses in Ashes of Creation, right? If Ashes focuses solely, like their main focus is going to be the journey to max level, which is why it's going to take 45 days and that many hours, and then there are many ways to reach that journey, then the whole MMORPG will revolve around you leveling characters, which is very different from any other MMO. It's the journey to get to max level and then boom, beat the last boss, which doesn't have to be too hard, but you beat him, and on we go, make another character, right? And go through that journey again. If that's what it's about, that could be fun if they make it fun. It doesn't have to be like comparing all. This is the thing, is like you really cannot even compare MMORPGs to other MMORPGs because each one of them focuses on something else, right? World of Warcraft focuses on loot. Final Fantasy focuses on lore and like the wow factor, right? Like, whoa, holy shit, like what an experience, right? ESO focuses on combat, okay? Guild Wars 2 focuses on cosmetics, really. The best cosmetics is like fucking, because it's like Mog Wars, not Guild Wars, right? Each one of these focuses on something really else. None of them, however, at the moment focus on the leveling experience. Okay? In my opinion, Final Fantasy 14 leveling experience is kind of shit. It's way too long. You have to do the whole story. You can buy a skip, but let's say without paying money. Right? World of Warcraft, what leveling experience? Fucking 1 to 70 on the same day, you know, so what leveling experience? ESO, what leveling experience? You literally, the only leveling experience you have there is like when you play your main character, you have to make multiple other characters so that while you're leveling the main one, that guy you can log in every 20 hours and get your speed, like mount skills up, right? That's your leveling experience. Once you got all of them up, you can play that character and speed run to level 50, and once you're level 50, get the champion points, though I believe they removed the champion points, but don't quote me on that. Or actually, they changed something with they lowered your level now to 50 instead of 60 or something. I don't remember how it works. I haven't played ESO in like 2 years. But yeah, but it's like that whole thing, right? So it's like, what leveling experience? Guild Wars 2. What leveling experience? You do the story once. I mean, I heard the story is decent, but it's like Guild Wars 2 is not known for its story. It's known for its like transmogs, right? So far there isn't an MMO that really focuses on the journey to max level. If Ashes can fill that void and the whole point is leveling to max level, I'm totally down. I'm totally fine with it. And then have like some end game content, but that's not the focus here. The focus here is the journey to max level. I'm fine with it. Totally okay.
Yeah, I think my favorite is the Arcade Red Dragon, where you can PvP as well.
Look at this pathetic dragon.
That's the Arcade one.
He's sitting there doing nothing for half the bloody boss fight. How is this your favorite boss fight? Have you played any goddamn games in the last 10 years? I'd feel more in danger fighting a lizard on the side of the street in Australia.
Oh yeah.
I mean, regardless of what boss you do in a game, I'd feel more danger fighting a lizard in Australia. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. I like the little the harpoon mechanic.
He likes the harpoon mechanic.
I love like you hear his face slam, like what do you call it? Face palm in the silence between those moments. I like the harpoon mechanic. Then there's silence, and you just hear. He likes the harpoon mechanic. I love it.
Man, if I see that shit in the game, I'm uninstalling right then and there. Clicking an icon and designing some slow-ass projectiles is no substitute for boss mechanics.
I have a confession.
Uh-oh.
I've never done a raid.
What?
What?
He's
Nope,
lying.
I only did dungeon bosses.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, I'm looking at one of the dragons. Well, what was your favorite dungeon boss?
In recent memory, the new WoW expansion had a pretty cool boss fight in one of the Covenants.
Is that Re in the background?
I can't remember which one, the vampire one. I don't remember what the name of the raid was.
No, it's the Phoenix. Okay, which one?
One of the Covenants. I can't remember which one, the vampire one. I don't remember what the name of the raid was, or not raid, dungeon was.
What was the dungeon? What was the
It
boss?
had this cool boss that would like throw you off a tower.
Cool boss. The only one I can think of really is the last boss of Sanguine Depths that had a knockback that could throw you off the platform, which is a rather small platform too.
And you'd have to like fight mobs to get back to the fight.
That's okay. Never mind. Okay, so it was Bastion. Was the last boss of Necrotic Wake. And the last boss would teleport one character down where you have to avoid the ice meteorites, whatever. And then at the end, you have to fight two mobs, click the thing to teleport back up. I guess that's what he means.
That's pretty cool.
Just to cement my point, I want to show you the standards for boss fights in 2022.
If he shows single-player boss fights, I cannot take this guy seriously.
Have at it.
The player is starting to think Ashes of Creation is this guy. I'll be excited again if I tease a bigger map and show more assets. I love this song. Okay, Devil May Cry, single player. Sekiro, single player. Okay, this is literally what he was complaining about, clicking a button. Don't get me wrong, this has a wow factor and really cool, but all it is clicking your button really fast. I mean, I can't believe he used this example when he just says like, the boss fight is clicking an icon, the harpoon. Don't get me wrong, this whole fight is really cool though. It's a pretty nice fight where it breaks the ground on the second phase, breaks the blocks so you don't have less and less room to stand on, and there's like a little small enrage time because of it. But other than that, I mean, like, this mechanic specifically that he's showing, just clicking a button. Where are the eels? Yeah, looks cool. Yeah. I mean, Lost Ark, like. Again, making a fight visually appealing doesn't make the fight anything like it is in Sekiro or Devil May Cry. Those are like Sekiro and Devil May Cry fights have nothing to do with what we just saw for Final Fantasy and Lost Ark. I'm just saying. They're visually appealing. No, very visually appealing fight. Yeah, sure. But this is a cinematic transition. It doesn't mean anything for the gameplay. Yeah, and Sekiro, Elden Ring, I mean, whatever. Also, this is one of the easiest bosses in Elden Ring, in my opinion. I think I killed it on the second try. To say one of the easiest big bosses in Elden Ring. Like, it's not, I don't know. It was very, very transparent abilities. The only reason I died for the first time is because I didn't notice the cloud. By the time I did, he was already like slashing me, and like I wasn't like full HP at that moment, so I was like, okay, whatever. But like, on that.
And there's another glaring issue. Open world, quote-unquote, dungeons. From everything we've
Yes, I
seen
agree,
in
I don't
Alpha
like
1
it.
and everything they've been saying, these open world dungeons are kind of horrible.
They are.
They just don't offer a worthwhile experience that can bear the name of a dungeon. They're
Okay,
more
is it
like
clear?
areas with elite mobs in World of Warcraft, very similar to Stormguard Keep in Arathi Highlands. Needless to say, I don't think I need to remind anyone just how much that place sucked.
Yeah.
But just to give you a quick refresher, you would go in, the mods would nearly kick your ass because they're elites and easy to pull by mistake. And then another group from the enemy faction came, they would kill you, and you wouldn't be able to fight back because you're already fighting mobs. Essentially making it so you'd be dead by default. Then you'd come back and kill them, and the enemy won't be able to return fire, creating this tedious back and forth as neither of the groups.
This was just a rogue haven. That's all it was. But yeah, so this is why, personally, I really don't like the idea of open world dungeons. I'm okay with like delves, like doing ESO, but then have an instant dungeon, instance raid, and stuff like that. I am okay if they had like world bosses, which is like open world dungeons, sure, but I don't always want to deal with other players when I'm doing PvE. And the thing is, like, well, just play on the PvE server. Let's say they have PvP and PvE servers. Even then, people can grief you even PvE because they can just attack or steal your mobs or something like that. That's not a fun experience, in my opinion. It's a really shitty experience. Just make instance dungeons and raids. I get the whole, like, well, if they're in the instance, they're not in the world, people can't see them. I get the whole aesthetic feeling of like the one breathing world and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, people will harass people enough times where people just quit. That's not a good feeling. And then you'll only be left with the hardcore players who just have time and don't mind some abuse. Or they're the abusers, right? Some people are not as social. They're not going to have as big of a group of friends. Maybe they'll play with like 1 or 2 other players. Guess what? A group of 5 players or 6 players or 10 players is going to come and just fucking demolish them for no reason. Just because they can, because they're 10 players and you're 3. That's not a fun experience. Now, there are PvP, punishments and all that stuff. I get that. But, I mean, you kill 1 player, hang out with your group, you're the only red player. Hang out with your group, no one's gonna be able to touch you because if you attack, you become purple. People can kill you and they'll be purple, so it's not a big deal, right? They can defend the red player until his red status goes away. And then he can kill again, or people in that group can start doing the killing, so they just become a red group and they just hang out together until their debuff goes away. Like shit like that. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, people will find a way to cheese the system, no matter how big the punishment is, unless like 90% reduced damage to players for some reason, right? It's like, you know, I don't know. I don't like the whole system. I like that there are punishments for people who are doing like PvP, like maliciously. I like that, but there are ways to be malicious without triggering red status. You know, plenty of ways. And I don't like, and people will still grief regardless of what you do, right? It's like, well, we're gonna ban griefers, but you're allowing it in the game regardless. And also, like, ban griefers, it has to be very, like, you know, the thing is, like, it doesn't have to be 1 player griefing you. It can be like random people coming and griefing you on repeat. You can't just ban 10 players because 1 player got griefed by 10 other people's. It's like saying, it's like, well, this guy's getting bullied by the whole school. I'm sorry, he's the problem, not the whole school. It can't be that the whole school is the bully while this guy's being bullied by everyone, you know? I'm sorry. Like, call me blaming the victim, but it's like, it doesn't work that way, okay? Usually there's like 1 or 2 bullies for the one guy. It's not like the whole school is bullying him and the teachers are bullying him and the fucking teacher is bullying him. Yeah, sorry, and the principal is bullying him and the parents are bullying him. No, it's not. That never happens. But this is what will happen in MMORPG area, because you could just have a whole guild of 200 people targeting you. Let's say it like this, okay? Asmongold is playing Ashes of Creation, right? Some guy is taking his shit. He's like, okay, this guy is the target. Like, we're gonna send people to kill him, and always gonna be different people. So you can't just ban different people, right?
Would be able to complete their quests for hours. From an outside perspective, you saw motivation for PvP. From an inside perspective, you were just tediously killing each other to keep the quest mobs alive.
Yep.
There's no reason to reinvent the dungeon formula. People like dungeons. Having more dungeons is great.
100% I agree.
Why is it that every time an MMORPG comes out that isn't pay to win, we're going back 10 years in terms of technology? 20 years.
This is true.
Then a game like Lost Ark comes out, and the gameplay is amazing compared to what all these nostalgia obsessed people tell you to play, and the community wonders why we give pay-to-win games the time of day.
I know, I don't like it, but whatever.
To play a pay-to-win piece of shit? No.
At least he knows what it is.
But my priority
But I have to.
with video games is to have fun.
True.
I want to have fun, not run around like a retard for 30 minutes
Hey, big words.
staring at textures or clicking on plant or rock textures is an enjoyable way to pass the time. Don't even get me started on the map. GTA 5.
Okay.
Big game, right? How big do you think the map is?
Okay, the map size, I don't have an issue with. I think it's cool that their map is that big. However, if it takes away from some development, which probably does, I don't think it's the best idea. But again, if the whole purpose of the of Ashes is the leveling experience, the journey to max level, I'm totally fine with having so many zones that you just want to like re-explore it on a different character, or like explore new ways to level up on different areas, go to places no one has ever been, you know. You have never been.
And answer honestly. Okay, whatever you said.
And we all know there's gonna be the crazy guy who makes a brand new character and just fucking swims across the fucking ocean to another land. Yeah, there's always gonna be that guy.
They give you an exact number. That number is 75.84 square kilometers.
Wow.
Size of classic Azeroth, 114 square kilometers. Now, how big did they say the Ashes of Creation map will be?
1,000 something.
1,400 square kilometers.
It's big.
Why?
Why not?
Even
Fuck it.
the servers. In WoW, the servers cap at 5,000 to 6,000 players. In Ashes, they increase.
Well, maybe in Classic, but I'm pretty sure it's 20,000. Fairly certain it's 20,000. And some even like have 40,000. Pretty sure.
Server capacity
as far as the cap.
10,000 players. But the map is more than 10 times the size.
Good, so if you want to play solo, won't have a problem.
Already feels empty. Can you imagine what Ashes would be like?
Okay, World of Warcraft only feels empty because of dungeons. Okay, and also it feels empty because there's nothing to do outside of like your raid lockouts and your maybe some dungeons. If we're talking about World of Warcraft like retail, right now it really doesn't feel empty. As soon as Mythic Plus starts, it will feel empty, which is probably what Steven wants to avoid with having no instance dungeons, for the world to not feel empty. Right? You want to have areas that no one goes to, sure, which is why you need a pretty big map. Obviously, this is usually more than enough if everything scales. But you also want to have open world content that people want to do. Right now, if you go to Dragonflight, the world really doesn't feel that empty. Well, I mean, technically, you don't see anyone outside of certain events, so the world technically is empty. But like, yeah, once Dungeons like Mythic Plus starts, the world will be empty regardless. You can have 10,000, 10 million players on the same server. It doesn't matter. The world will feel empty because if there's nothing to do in the world, no one goes to the world. That's just usually how it is.
To end this video off, I want to say this. I don't hate Ashes of Creation.
Yeah.
Some of the things they're doing show great promise. But some other things are so bad they might risk sabotaging the game entirely. Can you imagine what bug fixing across a 1,400 square kilometer map would be like?
Bro, this is the best way to
How long
walk.
that would take? Can you imagine how long it would take
What do you mean
to
bug
polish
fixes
and
across?
bug fix 64 classes and their
Okay.
different types of movement?
Yeah, so again, it's not 64 classes. It's 8 classes augmented, right? With the different augmentations. So it's like, it's technically 8 classes. You don't have to like fix too much, even if something is like fucked up. The other thing is like, I don't know what it means to fix across that big of a map. Like, what bug do you need to fix across that big of a map? Usually bugs are like specific to a zone or specific to a biome or specific to the character. I don't know exactly what bugs he's talking about that go to like worldwide, but sure.
Across that size of map. Can you imagine the pathing issues for
No.
enemies? The ways you can abuse the AI through that size of a map. It's just
Only if the AI pathing was already fucked up. Like in New World, I can see it because the AI has like very weird ass pathing. If you can stand on like a box, they'll never get to you. WoW used to have this problem and they fixed it. Mobs will just fucking teleport to you if you start doing funky shit. So, you know. Also, I believe Ashes, the range which mobs follow you is not that big overall. So it's like you can't just like keep kiting them forever all the way to city or some shit like that.
just not worth it.
Nice,
To
look
create
at that.
big of a game right off the bat is pure sabotage.
Uh,
It's slower. The magic of an MMORPG is that it evolves over time. You can make the map of that size eventually.
But that's exactly why WoW Classic, like WoW maps are dead. No one is hanging out in Shadowlands. Why? Because there's nothing to do there anymore. Because the game moved on. If he wants the whole world to keep being relevant, then yes, starting off big and not expanding on it is the way to go. Because if he expands on, people will not go to the old places, right? So I don't necessarily agree with this point. I understand his point. I just don't necessarily agree. It really kind of depends. And again, it really depends on what Steven wants to do with his MMO. Like I said before, if it's about the journey, by all means, make it 10,000 square kilometers.
Doesn't have to be like that on release. What people want on release is to have a proper, functional game regardless of its size.
No. No. That's not what they want. That's what is should be a given. That's not like something that they even think about. They want something to do in the game. Just having it like fucking function, that's not something like, oh man, I want my game to function. No, I expect my game to function. It should be functioning. That's all it is. That's not something I want. It's not like I go into a game, it's like, well, man, I hope this game functions. No, I already paid for it. It better fucking function. Imagine like Elden Ring had no content, but the game functioned. What the fuck am I doing in this game? I don't care that it functions. It should function, obviously, but it's like I need to function with something to do.
We don't need 16 times the detail, 4 times the size. What we
Why not?
need is a good, functional game.
Again, the comparison here is very fucking bad. First of all, V Rising was dead in like 2 weeks. Not gonna lie, the game's super fun, don't get me wrong, but there's nothing to do. You beat the last boss, like, okay, well, I build my castle, whatever, which by the way is like not even the best type of customization. It's good enough for what it is, for the you know, top-down view. I think it's fantastic, but like whatever. Vampire Survivor, I mean, honestly, just because it had good reviews, I don't think it's really that great of a game. it's not a bad game. It's a whatever game, you know? And it's like, okay, so let's say this. It was a good game that not a lot of people would play. And comparing it to goddamn MMORPGs is really not fair, right? Mario, the original one, is a really good game. I'm not gonna compare it to an upcoming MMORPG. That makes no fucking sense. And if you make an MMORPG with the same quantity of content as these, you will have a very failed. I get the point that he wants to, like, well, just keep it simple to the, like, no. MMORPGs are an extremely, extremely, extremely complex thing that have so many things going to it. The thing, like, you cannot compare an MMORPG to this. This is like, okay, keeping it simple. What is V Rising about? Kill some bosses, build your base, and PvP. That's what it's about. That's it. Everyone's going to finish at the same point. There are no classes in this game. That's super simple. Completely counter to what an MMORPG is. Okay. Vampire Survivor, what is it about? Well, choose your character, walk around, and it kills stuff in a different way. It's like, yeah, okay, that's like, where's the PvP? Where's the housing? Where's the transmogs? Like, there's nothing else, right? One character doing thing, you killed everything, go to a different character. Even comparing to Elden Ring is not fair, right? All of these comparisons are not fair. And like I said before, comparing MMOs to other MMORPGs is also to an extent not fair, because what is the focus? Yeah.
And I know you have every intention of delivering that. So please look at the history of the games behind you and learn their lessons. Focus your project.
Bad PV, bad PV, bad PV, bad PV. Okay. Mortal Online. Bad launch, bad PV. Guess what? Wasn't bad PV, it was bad gameplay. Okay? I don't even think people got to experience PvE in that game because they could barely get through their controller or controls. Archage or Arcage, whatever. It wasn't necessarily bad PV, it was the problem that at level 17 or so, it became almost impossible to level without buying shit. Okay, because Arcage is pretty popular in Korea. It's doing fairly well. It's not the PvE part. Crowfall, I don't even know. Never played. New World, bad PvE, like endgame, sure. However, people really enjoyed all the other shit in it. And the biggest reason people left, not necessarily so much because of the lack of PvE, but because the game was buggy and there was nothing to do. Which I guess you could say PvE, but honestly, if they had more world content, it would also be good. More professions, something to do with the professions would also be good. Somehow balance the economy would also be good. So it's like saying New World failed just because of bad PvE? No. Is there a common denominator here? Maybe, but honestly, Mortal Online 2 is not the PvE, it's the gameplay. Arcage is the fact that the game really sucks if you don't pay. Right? Imagine, okay, here, take Lost Ark, right? But make leveling 100 times slower. However, it would be 2 times faster than what it is now if you can pay for it. Guess what? No, it can have all the PvE in the world. No one's going to play it. Okay? Because they'll make it extremely impossible to level up. So it's not so much about the PvE.
Of the games behind you and learn their lessons. Focus your project up into a good foundation before you move on to a greater size. Ashes of Creation is one of the few games out there that has landed itself in a situation where I am praying they cut part of the game. But it has also landed itself in a situation where I pray for its success. Something that is
the only way I would say I wish they would cut some of their content is if the content becomes copy paste and not an original area of content, right? Like you can have like a forest biome, but one of them, the forest is like fucking the Amazons, and one of them is the forest that you have in the cities, like Central Park forest. Okay, it's not even really a forest. You know what I mean, right? Where it's like more open fields type forest, right? then I'm totally fine. But if it's like the same exact fucking biome, everything is the same mobs and all that stuff, it's like, I mean, like, then why have this kind of thing, you know?
Few and far between nowadays in the current gaming industry. That was it from me today. Make sure you like and subscribe. And
Do like
I'm
the
out.
video.
Peace.
What's interesting to me is, I wonder how many disliked the video when there's 4.3k views and only 99 likes. Let's see what people are saying. I don't even know what Dayok is. Had 36 classes released, so 8 classes with a little extra flavor. Those classes are not 64. They give you a warrior or mage, so your rush shield slam becomes a blink shield slam. Fair enough. The problem is that they're taking inspiration from Arcade, a game with a really convoluted class system. Even like this, it would... I mean, again, like... I was wondering whether this video was pure clickbait or if you had an actual hot take. I do agree with your worries on the scope of the project. Having a working game is most important, and that is more difficult. Don't know about you, but good open world PvP makes the game for me. Nope, not it. I couldn't care less about PvE bosses. They're predictable, and if you can follow direction given to you, and you will be fine. I don't know how people die in raids, to be honest. Players are not... Because Billy doesn't know what the fuck he's doing and he's killing you, man. And also sometimes there's like way too much to notice, and yeah, I mean, this is what we call an elitist, by the way. If you thought I'm an elitist, this is an elitist. I know how people die in raids. I mean, bro, let me throw you into a random mythic raid ever, like, yeah, you're not gonna have fun. Look at World First Raiders, like fucking 100+ wipes. Like, how do people die, bro? Because it's not that easy. It's easy once you know it. It's not that easy. Players are not predictable, so that's where... Actually, a lot of times, players are more predictable than some raid fights. I mean, I'm sorry, but it is what it is. So that's where my enjoyment comes from. Best PvE I've done is open world bosses where you get interrupted and gotta fight players while maintaining the boss. Unfortunately, all the games with that system are dead, and the only ones alive are the ones that do good PvE. I'm not here to argue what I prefer. I like open world PvP too. I'm just here to say it will die like all the rest of them. Yeah, this is like such a bad take though. This is like you're trying to like what dick measuring contest. I do agree that requiring 45 days to average to level to max. Yeah, I fully agree. Hey there, first of all, good job. I think you made some good assessment. However, you tend to forget that quite literally 99.9% of the whole MMORPG genre is now being made for the extremely casual player base, while the more hardcore player base, although niche, is being completely forgotten. Are they less important just because they're a more niche base? Now, 3 MMORPGs being developed are targeting specifically this player base. More Online 2, dead. AOC, maybe, and Fractured Line. Feel like that was bad graphics. That was forgotten for the better part of 15 years, and it's a good thing. Let the hardcore players have their new game as well. Without, yeah, I don't agree with this take. I think where you went wrong here is misunderstanding numbers behind these games. Guild Wars 2 isn't one of the most popular MMO games. It's almost less popular than New World is right now. At least New World is increasing in player numbers. You said it's been 15 years since the last hardcore PMRPG. Unfortunately, it hasn't, and I'm going to prove it to you. Arcade 2 released in 2013, and right now it sits at less than 200 players, split among the pay-to-win version and the non-pay-to-win. Albion Online is a full loot drop PvP MMORPG that's the closest thing to a game like Ashes of Creation. The reason why it is successful where many others aren't is because it is really easy to build yourself back up. There's no actual leveling that takes a long time, and there's way less walking around than most other MMOs. I need to try Albion. Even still, it only has 4K players concurrently. It's also balanced for 1v1 gameplay, and you can enjoy the game by yourself despite the risk of getting ganked. Game released 2017. Crowfall is the opposite of Albion. It is a game created with the goal of being always in a party, always playing with other players. It is a game with the full focus around PvP and group PvE elements, similar to what Ashes is trying to create. This game doesn't even have players anymore because you can't level without the help of others, and it couldn't secure a good enough player flow. It essentially made it so nobody could play the game except for the people at the top. I feel like I saw the Crowfall review recently. The game's completely dead now. Active player count 0. Game released 2021. It is the closest thing you're gonna get to an old school experience, especially the dead game part. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is what it is. Anyways, as the video somehow made a 28 video into an hour and 29. Well, let's say an hour 28 to make it like an extra hour. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. This is it from me, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.